This episode is proudly sponsored by Main Street Magazine. Mary, today we got something a little different.
We do. In the spirit of Community Moxie, we are featuring the Housatonic Valley Regional High School International Travel Club. We have social studies teacher John Lizzi, who took up the mantle of this club and helped reinvigorate it. And then we also have students Ellie Wolgemuth and Madison Melino, who have both been on several trips and who have been involved in the fundraising to make these trips possible for themselves. So it's going to be very interesting to hear what travel has meant to these students. And their latest trip was to Iceland. So I think you might find it interesting too.
I have a couple of points of connection. Yes, I could say that. But I can't wait to hear about their stories and where they've been and what this means to them as well as the community. So you want to dive in?
Let's do it. Let's get right to it. Ellie, you put your hand up before we started this rolling to define Moxie. What did you find?
So online it says it can be considered like courage or determination. And it just made me think like traveling takes a lot of bravery. You have to go overseas, you're getting on a plane. This might be the first time for some people. And it takes a lot of strength to just put yourself out there and try something new. And I think for me personally, it's really scary to like interact with people that don't speak the same language. So just working around that barrier and overcoming those challenges is really important when you travel.
Okay, Madison, how are you living Moxie right at this moment?
I'm currently in an airport in Iceland after having my trip postponed due to a glacier flooding. So I've determined and I've persevered through, the struggle of a long road trip around the entire country of Iceland. And traveling as a whole, I think you're determined to, one, leave your home, and then two, you're immersing yourself into a new place, and can be language barriers, and also you get to meet a lot of people.
We need to get the background on this club from John Lizzi. So, John, can you give us a little bit of a history of this club and where you've taken it to?
Yeah, absolutely. And just let me know if I'm going on too long because I could make it a 20-minute background or a 5-minute. But so in 2019 was when, or actually probably 2018, I was talking with a couple students and we were talking about international travel, and there had not been a international travel club at the high school, I believe, since 2005. Colleague of mine, Mary, who you will know, Mike DeMeza, ran a travel club way back in the day, in the 90s and early 2000s. And it kind of fell apart, if you will, because of rising costs of travel post 9/11. And there hadn't been anything since. In my early years at Housatonic, I was involved in a trip to China. That really wasn't part of a international travel club. We had a connection with a school over there, and Lisa Carter, who recently retired as superintendent. Her early career in international business had fostered some ties to China. So I was involved a little bit in international travel, specifically with that trip. But I kind of wanted to see what else might be out there. And just in talking with a couple of students, we found EF Tours, which is the largest student travel company in the world. And to anyone listening, if you go to their website now, you can spend hours just looking through all the different tours around the world that they offer. And it definitely excites you about what might be possible. So getting support from administration, in consultation with a few others, we decided on a trip to Europe's Mediterranean coast, and this was Italy, France, Spain, and Monaco. So it was 4 countries in 10 days. And we had a huge number of students who signed up for that trip. And I know we'll get into more of the fundraising piece of this later, but the number of students who signed up could have only been possible through how much fundraising we did. And I was not really prepared for how to fundraise at a mass scale like we do now. But because of a number of parents who had a lot of experience with that, who approached me that was kind of the start of what we do. And yeah, there really isn't a travel club program, I think, today at our school without the fundraising piece of it, because so many students do benefit and can only go because of the fundraising. And I'm sure Ellie and Madison could speak about that as well, because they've been so involved in it. So since 2019 and since that one trip, which was a big success, we had about 35 students, I think, on that one. We've been to Costa Rica and the Galapagos. Now, those trips have their own interesting story with them, because they were both cut short due to COVID. And there was definitely some Moxie being expressed, if you will, by the students and everyone. We definitely had to practice that. We've been to Greece, Japan, Ireland, Scotland. Wrote a list here because there's so many. Spain, Portugal, obviously Iceland this year, and we have more trips planned in the future as well. So since 2019, I'll say is when, if there's an official start date or origination date for us, and we're going very strong, and it's a huge team of teachers, parents, students, community members who are involved. So I know you said I'm sort of the founder. I'm uneasy with that title. It really is a collaborative effort, and it's certainly not something I could do on my own. So I don't know if that is a good history or not, but
that is a good history. And I'm glad you clarified. I said founder to give you the opportunity to call it a collaboration. But so and a fundraising arm was created, NWC, Students Without Borders.
Yes. This was really to, I don't want to say separate the fundraising arm from the school entirely, but we thought that we could have more opportunities to raise more money if we kind of created a separate entity beyond the International Travel Club, still underneath it. But this is where a lot of parents and community members have become involved. So we have our own board where we have teachers sit on it, parents as well, and they help really guide the fundraising piece. And as teachers, and I think I've felt this the last couple of years, there's so much planning that goes into the trips themselves that there isn't a lot of time for me to focus on, like, okay, but I got to make sure the wine dinner, which I know we'll talk about, is really operating where it needs to be. So I'm not the one who really takes the lead on that at all. So it's more, I don't want, bureaucratic is such a negative word, but we have all these different compartments and different aspects kind of running at the same time. So we came up with that name, Northwest Corner Students Without Borders, maybe only a few years ago, even though we were doing fundraising prior to that. But as we've kind of grown and our goals have become bigger in terms of how much fundraising we want to achieve, that's where that kind of name kind of came into play. And so when we do fundraising, that's the name we kind of lead with on behalf of the International Travel Club.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question, then we're going to get to Ellie and Madison. How many students, or what percentage of the school has this grown to involve over the years?
That's a good question. I think on some of our bigger trips, we have maybe brought about 10% of the school on any given trip. I think we're at about 400 students right now, and we've had trips that have brought 40 students.
That's impressive.
And yeah, thank you. And there are many students who go on multiple trips, including our 2 students here. And yeah, it's definitely impacting a large percentage of our community. And I think we're proud of the fact that even though we are a small school, we can offer a program such as this that a lot of larger schools don't necessarily have. Mm-hmm. And going back to the fundraising piece of it, we really want to ensure that any student can go and that cost is not going to be a prohibitive factor for you. So
Ellie, we'll start with you. Can you talk a bit about what the student role is in the fundraising? Does it help with the skin in the game and create ownership for you? How does that work, and how does it make you feel?
Definitely. So students help a lot, and it's really up to them to raise their own money, like fundraising for it. Everybody does their own share of work. So you go to businesses and you ask them, hey, would you like to sponsor or donate an auction item to the wine dinner auction? And at the end, we gather up everything that has been like collected, and I think we have like a spreadsheet of everything that everybody submits their information to, and you fill out a form at the end and to show what you've done, and then you get the money as a result. So you're supporting the group as a whole, but then the amount of work that you do, it ultimately benefits you in the end. And I think it's just so beneficial to us because like I have to think about money for college and other things in my life. So having this fundraising is really helpful to us.
Can I just ask, just, to put in perspective, how much on average does each student need to raise for, I know obviously certain trips cost more than others, but, there's travel with planes, there's food, there's hotels. How much are we actually talking that needs to be raised?
So each trip costs between $3,000 and $5,000 about, and the two trips, they kind of vary in prices. So one's a little bit more cheaper and that's more accessible for some students. And it depends on the fundraisers you do. We have another fundraiser later on in the year where it's called the annual appeal, and we send letters to the public asking for donations. So it depends on if you participate in those two fundraisers and how much you do. And I think if you do a lot of work, you can get over half or maybe 3/4 of the trip covered, which really helps a lot.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So Madison, what's your perspective on the fundraising? Do you have any other, like specifically what you've done or how it impacts how much you enjoy the trip to know that you earn money toward it?
Ellie covered a very broad part of it, so I trying to find what to say, but when it comes to fundraising, I really like reaching out to the community. Like I'll start with my friends, and then I'll go to my family members, and then I have neighbors. I am an out of district student, so that gives me a bit of a disadvantage because I didn't grow up in the community of the school is in. So when it comes to reaching out to local businesses, sometimes I'll go to like my corner I come from New York State, so I'll go to my local horse barn, or I'll go to the cafe that's down the road. So when it comes to fundraising, I think reaching out to businesses because they're supporting an international travel club that students get to travel the whole world. But yeah, Ellie covered a lot of what we do with the wine dinner and the appeal letters.
Okay, since she kind of answered that one for you, I'm throwing you
Sorry.
another question.
Sorry about that.
Okay,
No,
it's okay.
there's no problem.
It was very good.
It was very good, Ellie. You're a natural spokesperson. So Madison, what have been the takeaways? What countries have you visited, and what do you think is going to stay with you from these trips?
So I want to start off by what's going to stay with me is I'm going to have a more easily time navigating traveling. So I was with the original Galapagos Islands trip, which got postponed at least 4 times due to COVID. I was lucky enough to go as a middle school student out of district, but I was going to be coming to the high school because my mom works there. So I was part of the 2021 December Galapagos trip that kind of went a little it has an interesting story. We got to Ecuador, Quito, and they don't have the same healthcare resources as us. So when they had regulations such as we had a test for COVID every other morning, and when we had people test positive, that stopped us from getting to the actual islands. So that got turned around, and people stayed behind to quarantine, as well as I flew back without both my parents, with the rest of the high schoolers who were negative. So I traveled with that first. That got postponed and retried this last summer, so 2023. And this time we actually went to the Galapagos, and we had a total of 8 students. So since this was a trip that was supposed to happen in like 2019, 18, something like that, we had people who already graduated who were originally planning on going on this trip. So we had special permission, stuff like that, where graduates of Housatonic Valley were able to go on this trip. So that's why so few people went. I was the youngest on that trip. So that was my first one. We got to see the islands. We went to the lava tunnels and marine iguanas, Charles Darwin facility of with tortoises. So that was my first one. And then I went to last summer as well, Ireland and Scotland. So both of the countries were combined. That one was more customizable. My mom organized it to be more of an agricultural aspect to it. So we visited a sheep farm. We visited a horse breeding farm. We were going to visit a fish, like producing fish facility, but then that got moved to a mushroom growing facility where we learned a lot about how they grow their mushrooms and how sustainable they can stay with, growing the mushrooms with like compost and then repurposing after the mushrooms were harvested, repurposing that to go to farmers. So that was really cool to learn about how they reuse the soil that's grown for their crops that they produce. So that trip was very fun to go on. We visited castles, we got to see Highland paddles, we went to multiple Loch Nesses, which are lakes, Scottish term for lakes. And yeah, and then the trip that I'm just getting back from would be Iceland. And this trip was phenomenal. I am a huge nature lover. I love the birds that are here because since they're natural, like there's volcanoes, there's glaciers, called the land of the ice and fire. It was so cool seeing, how the island shifts from like, oh, you're in like a desert or Mars where the bubbling mud pots are, to then you're in the city and then you're seeing glaciers up on the mountain because there's one big glacier here.
Did you guys go get the famous hot dogs?
No, did not.
Well, if you're in the airport still, you still have a chance, but you can get them. They're fantastic everywhere. You can't go to Iceland without getting a hot dog.
The cultural food we got, I did not try it, but other people did, was fermented shark.
I tried it.
Yeah, don't do that. That's no. That you can skip that.
I didn't do it, but I learned that they didn't catch the shark. They on purpose. It was caught in their lines, so it was already dead at the surface because of how deep it was. It was a Greenland shark, I believe.
Yep.
I learned that part, how they're not really wasting the animal; they're using it instead. So that was cool to learn about.
And Ellie, what about you? What have been some of your more memorable moments?
So I went to Japan my sophomore year, and that was absolutely wonderful. It was a really big group of students, and we just had a great time. I think when you think of Japan, you think of Tokyo and like big cities and everything. And so for me, just being able to see the nature there and travel to like the different rural areas was really wonderful. Also, I went to Portugal and Spain this past April, and that was really cool. I'm going to study art after high school, so being able to see all the architecture there, see artists outside painting, outside of cathedrals, and being able to go into all these historical locations was just really wonderful for me. So I think just traveling really opens your eyes to different things that you might not have expected. I think for me, there's a lot of like perceptions of things that I think of beforehand. Like I'm nervous, like, oh no, it's going to be like this. And it ends up being completely different from what I expect. So it's just been really wonderful to see that.
So I read in a travel log that you wrote how that trip to Japan inspired your art or gave you different ideas. Can you talk about that at all?
So it was really interesting to see just a different part of the world in a different light. And I actually mean in a different light because in a sense, when we stepped off the plane, the lighting felt brighter to me. And I'm not sure if anybody else on our trip experienced this, but everything just felt clearer. It felt somewhat tropical because they were in like their summer season there. And there were just so many different beautiful sights to see that I did not expect to see at all. It just really opened my eyes in a way I hadn't expected.
This episode is proudly sponsored by Main Street Magazine. Main Street Magazine is a monthly magazine and a website with daily content, and we love to feature people, places, and things that make our community special. To learn more, please visit our website, www.mainstreetmag.com. What have you guys felt coming back home that have been the biggest takeaways that you then bring back to your friends, your community, your families? Is there anything that, is just blew you away or just, came into your soul that you brought back that you would never have experienced otherwise, except for the, going with this club?
I can answer. I don't know if Madison wants to answer.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So for me, I think just realizing how possible it is to travel with our school. Some people think, oh, I'm stuck in Connecticut, I'm stuck in this small town. But for me, I can get out, I can explore the world. It is possible to fundraise if you don't have enough money, and just really putting yourself out there is just so amazing, and just having that experience, I think it's really good to share with other people. You can travel if you want. You just have to like put your mind to it, fundraise, plan ahead, think about
Right.
your future. Yeah.
Right. And what about you, Madison?
For me, so I'm interested in sustainability, and I'm
Mhm.
very passionate about, using your resources as well as recycling, as well as composting, as well as, trying to steer away from plastic. So when I came to Iceland, they have always like these four different separate containers, one for paper, one for recyclable bottles, general waste, and then there's like food waste. I'm assuming goes to composting, but I don't know. So
They
I think
do.
that was really cool to see. And then relating back, I won't go deep into it, but I'm in this student run community in Housatonic called League. It's basically an environmental awareness kind of thing, and we've been trying to get this composting unit in our school for a while now, because there was a graduate who had a capstone project on it, as well as I was part of a FFA thing where I bring back a living to serve plan. And so seeing the components, or how Iceland manages their waste and how to separate them, I think I can really come back with new ideas. And so I think that's really important to me, as I see a lot of waste being produced, a lot of plastic being used. So I'm looking forward to really maybe finding ways to around that.
So that's kind of a huge thing, actually, that garbage, you saw garbage and how they distribute it. And now you're going to bring back and possibly make a change in your entire school. That's huge. Have any of your, based on what Ellie was saying, have any of your friends been now inspired to go that may have not gone before?
I think so,
Yes,
definitely. Yeah.
oh yeah. I've not convinced, but I think talking about my experiences and talking how it is fastly paced, because they want you to see a lot of things,
Mhm.
but it's also like you come to this place and you don't know when the next time you're gonna be here. So you want to get some things checked off the list. And so I think I've helped people get more comfortable sharing my experiences of future travels.
So, John, as a teacher at Housatonic, you're hearing about how these students have been influenced when they come back. How have you seen it in the classroom, or in the depths of student observations, or in comparisons they've been able to make? What have you noticed, or what have other teachers said to you about how this has enriched the student body?
Well, first, what I wanted to say, just piggybacking off of what Madison and Ellie said, and I think what they captured well is that you it's not really a satisfactory alternative just to read about these places or even see pictures or see video. You have to be there to really experience it firsthand, and it changes you. It's a cliche to say these are life-changing trips, but I think for most of the students that I've spoken to, and Ellie and Madison might agree, these are memories that are going to stay with us. And to give one example from Iceland, one of your other questions that you had put in the email was any aha moments from trips. And so we had read a lot about Iceland going into it, about how cold and like rainy and windy it can be, and make sure you're really prepared in terms of your clothing, et cetera, et cetera. And I think generally speaking, everyone who went did a decent job of preparing. I don't know, Madison, maybe not everyone on our tour, but there was one moment, and I'm sure you remember, Madison, where we got off the bus by the side of a cliff, and the wind was just whipping everywhere, and it was raining very hard, and it couldn't have been more than 40 degrees, but it felt so much colder. And our tour director the entire time had been trying to emphasize how dangerous Iceland can be, and how
Mhm.
the weather is so unpredictable. And it's just not a message that's really going to ring home with you, unless you experience it yourself. So that's just one small example, and I think students come back with a better understanding of their own place in the world. And
Mhm.
kind of what we were saying earlier, the Northwest Corner is just one location, and we do have lots of students who have not really traveled outside the Northwest Corner much at all, to say anything about going to another country. And so you really realize, how small the place you are that you live in is, and how different the rest of the world is, and how there's so much more to learn. So
What can I ask you guys? What have been some of your favorite uh, cultural things from the places you've gone to? If there's one food that you saw, or one site, or something that you may have seen in a book, but like the Galapagos, when I saw that you guys went there, I was like, oh my God, that's awesome! That's such a magical place. Is there one special thing that it just blew your mind from one of the places that you went to?
Yeah, so for me, I went to Tadaiji Temple in Japan,
Hmm.
and I think it's the largest wooden temple either in Japan or in the world, and it's completely out of wood, this massive structure. You're kind of under this little like bridge gateway when you walk into the area it's in,
Hmm.
and when you come out, the temple is just there in this big open space, big like gravel walkway for you to walk up to it. They have certain rules about like you can't stop in the entryway because they want to keep people moving in and out of it. And for me, that was just so impressive to see this large structure with these giant statues of Buddha inside and some other of the gods that they believe in, which for me, I'm not personally very religious, but seeing that structure was just so powerful and meaningful. It really moved me.
And what about for you, Madison?
For me, going to Ireland, Scotland, I think seeing the castles was astonishing and it was breathtaking. And especially the Edinburgh Castle, there's you're in Edinburgh, but then you see like off a cliff and on the top of a cliff there's this castle and it looks so big from down below. And then we were able to travel up to it and we saw the architecture. Then we went to Blarney's Castle and then learning about the crypties, I believe they're called. They're the horses that are believed to come out of the water and take children at night. But we got
Hmm.
to go stop by the huge sculpture and structure made out of metal that lights up at night. So learning about their mythology there as well and what they believe in, or tales have been told. I think that was really cool to learn about the culture. And then when I went to the Galapagos Islands, they eat what we call a pet here, which is a guinea pig. So
Hmm.
they eat guinea pig down there. I did not have any. However, that's an animal that they raise for, for as a dish for meat. So learning, different cultures are different.
So I want to come back to the community support that you've received. And one thing about living in the Northwest corner is, yes, it's small and it can be limiting in some ways. But do any of you want to speak to what it felt like to have the community have your back in this way? I think, especially the younger students, to just know that there are so many people out there who don't really even know you that are rooting for you. Can you talk to if that evokes anything in you or makes you feel supported and safe?
Well, for me, it was really impressive seeing how many people offered to donate or give an auction item. I think there are a lot of small businesses in the area that they're trying to make the most money they can, and it might be a
Hmm.
little bit hard. So just seeing so many people offer their support, even if it might be a challenge for them as well, was just really, really nice and very like thoughtful of them to do that.
Yeah, I remember at the past wine dinner when we were selling the live auction, where like you bid a higher price, and I thought it was so it was very eye-opening to see all the support that we got from people raising the cost, even though it was just a lunch with their principal, or it was this, it was this golf course where we got the auction items and the sponsorship. So having these people come to the live auction and raise the cost for the purpose of supporting us as high school students traveling.
John, were you surprised at the community outpouring for the
Ye-
reboot?
Yes, I mean, I don't live in district, so I think going into the formation of the travel club, I didn't really have a strong idea of what to expect. Uh, Going back to that first meeting for our first Europe trip, I remember saying to the group of parents and students, like, "Oh, we're gonna do some bake sales, and we're definitely gonna try to raise money for students." And I know there were parents kind of like scoffing at me in the crowd, and that was when a few actually approached me and said, no, we have this, we have some ideas for you, and I've learned a lot about just kind of student fundraising along the way from these parents. But essentially, you know, I think having students take the lead with the fundraising. You know, our community is very generous to us, but you know, it's hard to say no to students when they can really speak to what they hope to achieve on these trips, what they hope to learn. And I think that makes a huge difference in itself. And even just more generally, the idea that, like, you know, if you don't ask, then, well, you're definitely not going to get fundraising.
Right.
So to try to ask as much as you can, and you'd be surprised. A lot of good people out there. Yeah, so we're so grateful for the support, but I was not aware at all. And I don't know if we wanted to get into this later, but like the last 2 years at our wine dinner, we've raised an average of between $40,000 and $50,000 in one night.
Wow, that's
And
incredible.
That is incredible.
yeah, and I had no comprehension that something like that was possible. So
Well, I think I tell my students, you're the cute little puppies of the world, and people can't say no to a cute puppy. They just want to help. And I think this area in particular, living in this area, the local community, individuals, businesses, they are so behind the young people who live here. And this is such a shining example of that. So do you want to talk about this year's wine dinner? And because it's coming up, so we could plug it.
sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. So I believe this is our sixth wine dinner now. We've been doing them since 2018 with 1 year break because of COVID. So it's at the White Hart, and Dan Winkley, the owner there, has always been a fantastic supporter of us, and he has essentially lent us his venue for this event all of this time. And we split the ticket costs with him, and that's essentially it. And he provides a wonderful four course meal, gourmet meal, and then we pair it with wine as well. So our wine dinner this year is September 13th at 6:30. And we're going to start selling tickets very soon, probably in early August. We have a website, which is winedinnerandauction.com. I don't know how that URL was available when we got it, but we got it.
It's a good one.
So anyone listening can go there, and they can see who has currently sponsored us. They can sponsor themselves, and donate any amount is greatly appreciated. Eventually, the menu for the night will be up there as well. And yeah, you can buy tickets. And yeah, we'd love to have anyone's support. And I think usually we have between 100 and 150 guests. And there will be a live and silent auction there as well. And on the live auction side, we've had huge items, including trips, and very nice pieces of art donated by members of the local community. And on the silent auction side, we have lots of smaller items too. So there's something that everyone can kind of bid on, and it's a lot of fun. The dinner, and the students are the ones that we try to feature as much as possible, as Madison and Ellie can speak to, and so they'll be present, you know, mingling and speaking with all the guests. And yeah, we'd love to have people there.
So do you guys saddle up to them and like, let me tell you about when I got stuck in Iceland? Do you guys do that, or?
Yes, we definitely want students to share their past experiences, and most importantly, what they hope to achieve on these trips. And the more they're able to speak to that, I think the more the community wants to help.
So Madison and Ellie, you're going to be podcast stars by the time this dinner rolls around. But what do you have anything you'd like to say to the podcast audience about supporting you, or just a final appeal from your point of view?
Okay, I can start. So to the community, and whoever is listening, I would recommend following our HVRHS Travels social medias. So we have an Instagram one. I'm not aware if there's a Facebook, and then there's online, because then we have stories on Instagram, because then you're able to see as the trip goes on what we're doing, and there's lives. So I recommend following along on our trips that way, but also attending the wine dinner would be greatly appreciated, and that would, support us greatly, but also spreading, the word and what we do, and how our high school has such a great resource, because there's plenty of high schools that don't have this resource in the community that supports us.
Perfect. And we could put that social media information in the show notes. No problem.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add on to that. If you have your kids that are going to come to Husi in a few years, start thinking about it, because it's such a wonderful opportunity. And I think Mr. Lizzi and the other teachers really want to continue it for as many years as possible. So just keeping that support, keeping that energy is really important to the community.
And what are some of the upcoming trips that are planned? Anything for the fall or winter, spring going into the new year that you're fundraising for now?
Yeah, so our current wine dinner is to support our trips in 2025. So in April, so we always have 2 trips per year. That's what we've been doing for the last few years. So we have an April break trip, and that's going to be Italy, Germany, with I think maybe a day in Austria as well. And then in July, we have a trip to Thailand.
Wow.
And yeah, that trip is unique in that it's the first service learning trip that we've done.
Okay.
And so I think we're going to be working in an elephant sanctuary. We're going to learn more details about what the actual project is as we get closer to that date. But EF Tours, again, the tour company we travel with, has service learning specific tours, and not that the other ones don't have a ton of learning embedded within them, but this one has a specific project for students to work on. So we're really excited about that.
Wow, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great opportunity too.
Mm-hmm.
John, I know that a lot of the school community, in terms of faculty and staff, have also gone on these trips. What have you noticed about them as individuals, changes or aha, like what has it done for the community of staff and faculty?
Well, I think it for me and for other teachers, it allows you to kind of see the students in a very, very different context. We're so used to seeing them just as students in our classroom sitting at a desk, right? But in this case, we're seeing them really 24/7, morning, afternoon, and night. We see their eyes, grow big at seeing different sights and experiencing different things. And I think as a teacher, you see this experiential and authentic learning kind of taking place that you really can't bring back into your classroom as much as you might try. As much as teachers, we try to have innovative and student-centered activities and lessons that are fantastic. It doesn't quite match up to putting students in these locations. And it's, as we've talked about, it's very difficult and challenging to do so, to get to that point. We roll out our trips maybe 18 months in advance from here's the rollout, and then 18 months from now we're actually going. So it's a long time to get to that point, but I think the payoff is so worth it. And I think other teachers who have come on these trips for the first time really do realize that. So that would be the takeaway for me.
So I want to flip that. What's it like, Ellie and Madison, seeing your teachers 24/7 and maybe a little differently than the person in front of the whiteboard?
It's so much fun. I really got to know some teachers very well on the past 2 trips that I've been on. And it's kind of strange seeing them in casual t-shirts and shorts. Our principal went on the Portugal and Spain trip, and he was so much fun to travel with. And you really get to know teachers on these trips a lot. Like, what are their hobbies? What are they looking forward to doing? Some teachers want to go to a record store or a certain place they really want to see. And it's good. You learn more about your mentors and the adults in the school through these trips.
Madison, what about you?
Oh, I completely agree. It is definitely different seeing them casually dressed. And I do remember Ireland, Scotland, our superintendent, who retired, Carter, she came on our trip, and she had a very good time, and she had a blast, and she got to see out of district students come onto a trip, and we got to see how much they enjoyed it. We connected to a school in Sheffield, Massachusetts, Mount Everett. Berkshire schools. And so they were able to come along with us. And so I think she's a proud supporter in having students out of district come if we have spots available for the opportunity that they're given.
All right. Is there anything else you want to say? Any shout outs, anything before we close out about this program? Now is your chance.
I would just say how thankful I think we are for this opportunity to be on this podcast, and as I said earlier, just a big thanks to the Region 1 community for your continued support of the International Travel Club and helping students achieve their dreams of traveling overseas. It means a lot to me, and I know to the students as well.
Well, we expect a postcard from the next trip.
You got it.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This episode is proudly sponsored by Main Street Magazine.